everybody, Sexy Matt the Pharaoh Wizard here. It's finally here, the possibly controversial, dark and gritty Joker movie. What I like, what I dislike, let's get into it. So for those of you that do not know where this fits in the wider DCEU and how this works with other movies, let me tell you, it doesn't. This is made to be its own standalone, outside any sort of continuity Joker movie. So it has nothing to do with the Jared Leto Joker, has nothing to do with the Jack Nicholson. It's just its own, completely outside of continuity movie. So just in case you're confused or didn't know, that's how this movie works. But let's get into it. So Joker is brought to us by director Todd Phillips, who's mostly known for stuff like the Hangover movies, Old School, and Road Trip. So older 2000s comedy movies. We'll get into that in a second. But the plot of the Joker is Arthur Fleck, a emotionally disturbed and depressed, has many mental issues person, is trying to live within a normal society and work his best to be part of this society, but finds it very hard to fit in with the society and eventually snaps. Without too many spoilers or anything there, that's the basic plot of the Joker. So let's talk about the characters. So of course we got the titular Joker played by Joaquin Phoenix. And I think the Joker is like the most coveted role that anyone wants to play now, it feels like. Ever since Heath Ledger did it, like everyone's been biting and wanting to do their version of the Joker and doing crazy weird stuff. Like Jared Leto like sent condoms and weird shit to his castmates in the filming of Suicide Squad, kind of being, oh, I'm crazy. And of course Heath Ledger was famously known for locking himself in a hotel room, just keeping a journal of his thoughts and kind of getting into the character that way. So what's Joaquin Phoenix do with this character? Well, quite a lot, honestly. Like, I really want to hate Joaquin Phoenix, but damn it, is he great. Like, he's such an artiste. And it really, like, I hate that kind of, like, I'm an actor. You're just a movie star. I'm an actor. Like, he's really that guy. And I really hate that, but god damn it, is he good. Everything he's in, he really gets into the role and you stop seeing him as an actor and you really see him as the character. And I think it really leads to a very interesting take on the Joker. It really delves into his mental issues and, mental issues in general and people with issues like that, emotionally disturbed people, and how we've basically told them they need to live in society and act normally even though they just straight can't. And it kind of tiptoes that line, and he does a great job playing it off, and he is so good in this. Damn it, you're great. So of course the Joker's got to have some external people that really push him to his breaking point. One of those being Sophie Dumont, played by Zazie Beetz, who you might recognize as Domino from Deadpool 2. So she is really great in this, plays some really cool stuff, and her character in general is really awesome because she is not actively trying to antagonize Arthur, or the Joker. Let's call him Arthur. He's mostly Arthur Fleck through the movie. Anyways, she's not trying to actively antagonize him, but he sees her in a different light. And I don't want to get into too many spoilers with her, but it's kind of interesting to see how, through no action of her own, she helped be part of this problem. And it's kind of something that's really in real life. Like, kind of like how the guy that shot Reagan thought Jodie Foster would be impressed if he did that. It's sort of that level of, like, she didn't purposely do anything, but it's kind of interesting, and I liked it. And she was great in this. And of course, we can't have a crazy person without mother issues, so we gotta have Arthur Fleck's mom, Penny Fleck, played by Frances Conroy, who was also in another comic book movie.
I was a professor for 20 years, until I was denied tenure. Male academia.
Yep, that was a thing. She's done many other roles. I think it's funny that she's Catwoman. And there's nothing to say that that character in Catwoman isn't just a younger version of this character, because I don't know if we got a name. Maybe it's a universe altogether. Catwoman and Joker are the same universe. But she's really cool, and you really see how this really pushes Arthur. I won't get into any details, but she really pushes Arthur, and she is such like a light in his life, like a guiding light, in a very Batesy style fashion of like he's been an only child for all his life, so he's been the man of the house and feels he has to take care of her, and like she is this part of his life that he will never get rid of, and it's kind of an interesting push in Arthur's life. And finally, I'd like to mention Robert De Niro playing Murray Franklin, who is a talk show host in the vein of like Jay Leno or Johnny Carson or Conan O'Brien in that level. The important part about Robert De Niro's role in this is he tried. Robert De Niro is a fantastic actor. When you see things like Taxi Driver or Cape Fear, he is so good. But it seems like ever since Meet the Parents, he's basically been phoning it in almost every role he's been in. I could probably be wrong if I really looked into his IMDb, but overall, like, he's been phoning it in for a while. He doesn't do that in this. He is great in this. There's a point at the end of the movie where you really see the character struggling with trying to be a talk show host, but being also very upset. There's some really cool moments with that, and I really enjoyed what he was doing. And Robert De Niro really brought his A game to this, and I'm really glad to see that he can still like kill it when he really wants to. But what worked well about Joker? Well, I had many fears going into this movie, and one of the biggest is being that this is just a normal crazy guy movie that they just decided to paint with a Joker paintbrush so they can, put butts in seats, and it really has nothing to do with the Joker. I was proven absolutely wrong about that. Like, had a whole thing in my head already built up for this review where I was going to be like, oh, you could just fill them in with Charlie the Dick-Nosed Clown and it wouldn't have changed anything. No, this actually is very much a Joker movie, and I was very surprised about that. This movie is surprisingly steeped in comic book lore and comic book culture. It is very much the Joker. And something about how Joaquin really plays him, it's not just a crazy guy. It is the Joker. It feels like the Joker. So I applaud them for that, because I really thought it was just going to be a generic, like, crazy guy, and then we'll make him the Joker. That way people will come and see it, because comic book movies are big. But no, I was absolutely wrong about that. This is very much a Joker movie. Another thing I was very concerned about this being is that they were going to give away too much about the Joker. The draw and the interesting nature of the character of the Joker is he doesn't have a set in stone origin. And like they've really played that up in other things. Like, we don't know the origin of the Jared Leto Joker. We don't know the origin of the Heath Ledger Joker. And that one they really played with, like, he had multiple excuses for why he had his scars. And even the Jack Nicholson one, although we saw him being created as the Joker, we don't know a lot about Jack Napier, the guy who he was before the Joker. We just sort of know that he was a gangster, but we don't know like what his likes were, what he was, is he funny, what was he about. We didn't know very much about him. And that what makes the Joker interesting is that you don't know a lot about him, and he's kind of this crazy wild card. He's even, got a famous quote from one of the comics that says, I like my origin to be multiple choice. And so I was worried when they're like, oh, we're doing Joker origin movie. Super. So you're going to tell us everything we need to possibly know about the Joker. That won't, be like Wolverine Origins at all. But I was wrong. I don't want to go into specifics. I'm going to talk about it in spoilers, but they definitely make it so you don't know everything about the Joker. You kind of get the nuts and bolts of like why he wears face paint and like his first crimes and things like that, but you don't get the real meat and potatoes of why he's the Joker. It's kind of interesting, and again, I don't want to give too much away, so I'm going to leave that for spoilers, but rest assured, you don't know everything about the Joker. Now, as the movie in a whole, it is very upsetting and brutal, and a lot of that leads to the cinematography and the overall production design of this movie. There are some shots that just make it very upsetting and very unnerving. The sound score leads to that a lot. Like, a lot of people put a lot of really good work into this, building up Gotham like it's the 70s New York, the dirty, grungy New York, the filthy, crime-ridden New York that was in the 70s, and not so much the New York now where it's a tourist trap. Just to see that gritty, gross New York and how it built into this character and how it built into this world made it very cool. Did some very cool stuff there. And I really liked it. It really gave this movie its own individual flavor, and that was very awesome. And overall, this is just a well-made, interesting movie with a lot of subtext building into things like the rich versus the poor, mental health, and how you need to live in society like that. You know, it talks about how you treat your fellow man. A lot of different subtext is in this, and a lot can be gleaned from it, and it has some very cool stuff going for it. I really enjoyed that. But no movie is perfect. Where does the Joker fall short? Well, through no fault of the movie itself, there's some external things about this movie that make it hard for me to fully enjoy. So, the director, Todd Phillips, had a couple interviews, and a couple times he kind of shoved his foot in his mouth, in my opinion. So, first off, he said, like, this movie was a way to sneak in a real movie into this comic book world. And maybe he misspoke, but he basically inferred that comic book movies aren't real movies. And that's awesome. So it's like a comic book movie made by a guy who hates comic book movies. And then he also had another interview with a whole tirade about how woke culture destroyed comedy, and nothing's funny anymore. We can't joke about anything ever. You can't laugh. No one laughs anymore because of woke culture. And he went on that whole thing, and it just makes you be like, oh my God, this guy. And I know the movie needs to stand on its own, but in a world where we know so much about everyone that makes a movie, it's hard not to infer things they say into their art. And so it's hard to have something like Death of the Author when we know so much about the author. You kind of get mixed into that. On top of the director being a dick, there's a lot of controversy around this. The biggest being that this is a movie about a mentally unstable man who decides to take it out violently on society. And it's also the Joker doing that, and it's hard to not link that to the Aurora Theater shooting during The Dark Knight Rises. And that hits home a lot for me, considering Aurora is like 5 miles that way. I've been to that theater. I've seen the theater before and after the shooting. And, of course, I'm a comic book fan, so I went to The Dark Knight Rises opening night. So it was a very kind of scary time. And I don't think this movie is going to create new killers or anything, but it's very hard not to link those two together through no fault of the movie itself. And I don't want to say this movie shouldn't exist because of that, but I'm just saying, for me personally, it makes it sticky. Let's just put it like that's the only way I can really put it. It makes it sticky. It's not cut and clean. It makes it ugh. And then, you know, so much of this, especially from what the director's saying in interviews and how Joaquin generally acts, although I applaud Joaquin for basically being very quiet through most interviews through this Joker thing. Like, I haven't heard a whole lot of him saying anything. But it's so much like this is a comic book movie made by artistes. And we are artistes. We're not just making a movie. This is film. And it's like, oh, I fucking hate that so much. Like, just make your goddamn movie. So all these like external bits and pieces make it very hard for me to really want to enjoy this movie. And I know the movie should just stand on its own, but like I said, it's hard not to tie these all together. So I think maybe in like 3 or 4 months when it comes out on DVD, I might need to watch it again, where all that stuff kind of slipped away and maybe has gone away, and I can kind of see it through fresher eyes. But for the movie itself, one thing I really didn't like is I think it definitely makes you sympathize with the Joker. And I don't think that he's a character you should sympathize with. Like Thanos, they kind of paint him as a sympathetic character, and that works. For the Joker, he's more of this like unrelenting force of nature. He's, a horrible, horrible person who will never be redeemed. So you really shouldn't try to sympathize with him. Some people are just awful people. And that's just my own bias, I guess, but I just don't think we should be sympathizing with the Joker at all. And I think this movie paints a little bit of a sympathetic picture of the Joker, and we should feel bad for him. Because, man, it's just society. And a lot of this movie is just blaming society, man, for letting him down. Nut up, Buttercup. Like, just, we all got to deal with society. So, why are you different? So there's a bit of that in this movie for sure. And the biggest thing, and this is probably external to the movie itself, but it's kind of something I think should be discussed. And maybe this is a whole nother video, so I'll try not to go too crazy on this. But like I mentioned, this is very steeped in comic book culture and comic book lore. And they could definitely make a whole new universe like in this gritty, dirty 70s. But they're not going to. One, because they're artists. And, like, I mean, they might, but I really don't think they're going to. And that kind of leads towards, it seems like this big push towards unrelated standalone comic movies again. And the thing is, I fucking hate those. Like, there's rumors that the new Batman movie is going to be completely separated from the DCEU and be its own thing. And the thing about that is, I every time you do that, you have to rebuild this whole universe, and we got to have the first superhero in this universe, and like everyone's shocked about superheroes, and that's boring. We've had that ever since the 40s with with Superman versus the Mole Man. We've seen that for decades. I like how the Marvel universe is like, there's a new hero, cool, all right. Like, the world in that movie doesn't have to, like, freak out and, like, oh, there's superheroes. They know, they're aware. And I like things like Shazam, where he's inspired by the heroes in that universe already. So we can expand the stories a lot more, make them go a lot farther. Because really, when you build these universes so enclosed and in on themselves, the most you can really get is maybe 4 movies out of it, before the actors are either too old or just done with it, before it just gets stale. It implodes on itself, so you can't really get that far and do many storylines because it's stale and old. Where the Marvel universe and even the DCEU, at least there's different things going on, so you can have something like the Winter Soldier, who has so much in there with like Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury and the Winter Soldier himself and the Black Widow and all that stuff going on that wasn't ever really introduced in any other Captain America movie, but it's all within this universe and you can understand it without having to have everything re-explained and the whole universe recontextualized. Okay, sorry, that's a whole rant, and I think that might be a whole nother video about how I don't like standalone comic movies, but there you go. So that's enough of me ranting, so let's throw up the spoiler sign, let's do some spoilers. Jump to this time code here if you don't want to be spoiled, because there's spoilers going on. Here we go. Well, this whole movie basically leads up to a Batman origin movie again. We see the death of Martha and Thomas Wayne again, for like the 40th time on film. They're always getting murdered. That's worse than Uncle Ben. Now, it's not the Joker that did it, and I like how they tie it into what the Joker's doing and how this universe is, and I thought that was really cool. But yeah, again, it was just them dying again. But yeah, you get Bruce Wayne, you have the Wayne family, there's other tips and hints and little Easter eggs for other things. So they could really build off this and make a new universe, and it'd be kind of interesting. Because like I said before, the Batman movie that's supposed to be coming out in 2 years, it could actually relate to this maybe? There's a possibility that this is the new universe the DCEU is going with. It's hard to say. Again, I don't know if they are or not. because there's so much artistes and this is our vision. But it could. But if they did continue it on, it creates an interesting affect because you see Bruce Wayne, he's got to be like 12 at the most. And Arthur Fleck has got to be 30 at the least. So there's like a 20-year difference between the two of them. So would it be interesting to see Batman at his peak in his 30s beating up a 50-year-old man? I mean, it still could work, because the Joker's not a physical match for Batman, he's an intellectual match. So it could still work, but it's kind of interesting. So the coolest part about this movie, and that I kind of inferred before, is that the Joker is an unreliable narrator. Now, he's not literally narrating this movie, but we see it all through the eyes of the Joker. And there's a few times they show that he slips into, visions and has different psychotic breakdowns, and you're not sure what's real and what's not. Like, he thinks he's dating Zazie Beetz, but turns out he never was. He just had that in his mind that they were dating. And he feels like he has a relationship with Robert De Niro's character, but he really doesn't. So that's what I meant by, like, you don't know everything about the Joker, because you don't know what's even real. They even kind of left it at the end where, like, did this movie even happen? And, like, they kind of hint that he might be Thomas Wayne's illegitimate son, but then there's also proof that he's not. But then there's also ways that it could be, and that Thomas covered it up. Like, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, and they don't give you straight answers, so it leaves a lot to question, and it definitely leaves the origin of Joker a lot more open than I initially thought this movie was going to do. And I thought it was really cool that they did that through the unreliable narrator, where he's telling the story, or we're seeing it through his eyes, but his eyes are wrong, and he can be wrong, and it makes it very cool. And I thought that was the coolest part of this movie, is just that how much we don't know what's going on. And I thought that was very, very awesome, and it was really cool. So this video has probably gone a bit long because I have a lot to say about the Joker and how it relates to comic book movies in general. But let's go ahead and wrap this up. So in the end, the Joker is an incredibly brutal, interesting, cleverly made movie, but I still find it hard to enjoy. And it may be due to those external factors, I don't know. So I'm very torn, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. What I would say, though, for my rating is see it in theaters, because I think you should judge for yourself on what you think about it. Regardless of what external factors there are, I think this movie is worth seeing and judging for yourself. So definitely check it out in theaters and, judge for yourself. So did you see the Joker? What did you think? Let me know in those comments below. Hit that thumbs up if you want more standalone movies, or if you just want more universe movies. Either way, hit the thumbs up and share this video with anyone possible. That would be very helpful for me. I'm Sexy Matt the Pharaoh Wizard. Until next time, hold on to your hold slots.